It's not. Oh, it is. Today, I would like to watch a video with y'all about the Olmecs and try to understand what's the issue with the ethnic background. Trying to figure out exactly where they came from. People say they're the local indigenous tribe. It's already there. You just gotta look. And there's people that say that, from Africa. Then there's the ones that say they're not from, it doesn't have to be from Africa. They have Negroid features that when you do bring that up, it's crazy. It's automatically just, But not too long ago, the explanation for the Olmec heads was that the faces were trying to make a jaguar, like a weird jaguar person. That's cat. We all know that's cat. That's cat. Cut out all that cat. Oh, did I delete? I know my cat ain't over there pushing on the dog. YouTube.com. Yeah. Let's see if we can find it. Where that loot caverns?
So Kick just rolled out.
So the video we're watching is about Luke Cavendish. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it. It says, is Graham Hancock right about the Olmecs? Find out.
Of the sub revenue. Kick is really stepping.
So the Olmecs are perhaps Mesoamerica's strangest and most...
That's the face. They said was trying to be a werepanther. So the thick lips was supposed to be cat, the cat nose. It's crazy. Clearly. Okay. I got phone number. That's it. So you got a security alert on my phone. All right. So basically, I want to prove in this video that, yeah, they were Negroid features. Black, what we would call black today. And of course, yes, they're not directly straight from Africa. Exactly. I have another theory involving the Sentinelese people, which is also another wrong word, which is actually something not a lot of people talk about, like not the Sentinelese, but the how the Sentinelese people, even though they're black, are not African though. They've been there, I think it's 60,000 years, and are closely more related to the Chinese than they are Africans. I think they even have more DNA. The Chinese people are basically from them. So, and that's pretty fascinating. I have evidence, possibly. Can you get you evidence that it's a clear migration pattern? Path into Central America. I think Graham Hancock said that one time too. And I came up with this one when the video about said black Chinese people. And I was like, okay, citizens. And it was like, nah, like tribes of these people, I guess, indigenous to the area. So I was like, that can happen. And clearly, there's it's possible. This resistance to this though is insane. Like how this kind of evidence really you try to present to somebody, they kind of get like standoffish real quick. Like, why's it gotta be about color? And it's not. But the system is set by color. Our system, our mainstream system. So it's like when it's convenient, it's about color. When it's not, why's it gotta be about it? And this one ain't about color, it's about culture. I would like to understand the culture so we can look into the culture with this race thing in this particular field, especially, has us divided on this topic. So we gonna do what we do.
Fascinating ancient culture. They seem to arrive on the historical timeline being almost a fully fledged and organized civilization whose artwork and stonemasonry is completely fully formed at the very beginning of its civilization, or at least we don't have much of an archaeological record going back before the time of these gigantic.
This was crazy. So they showed up and oh god damn, okay. This also ties into India a lot. Like I said, wow. Okay, he said they showed up and they had their culture already, like their artwork was already established. There's no like evidence of them gradually growing into this. Which this ties it into the India theory where Prince Rama, somebody came with his army. Correction on this, it's not monkey people. We used to think it was monkey people, allegedly, apparently. It was actually, they called them jungle people. They were very skilled masons and very strong people and very intelligent, which is also crazy because, again, it was, I think the monkey thing came out of a racist thing, judging that the jungle people in India originally are the Jara, Sentinelese, or probably a tribe, kind of like that, closer to that to me. And then their gods matching up, storylines, symbols appearing in South America that are over in. Yeah, this shit ain't coincidence, man. The fact that people think we are conspiracy theorists for just asking, like, hey, why is it that? Can you explain that? No, you're fucking weird. That's what this. So we're gonna explain that. I'll try to get into the India part, but main focus right here is, well, yeah, India's part of it, so ethnicity. So it looks like we're coming closer to Negro. They've been there.
Gigantic colossal heads, and it's really not just the colossal heads. You have these enormous hexagonal column tombs that are being mined from basalt quarries over 100 kilometers away from their final site, and tons of other megalithic statues as well. We also don't even know what the Olmecs actually called themselves. We only get the name Olmecs or Olmecas from the Aztecs, referring to the people who were living in the Olmec area some 2,000 years later, and it means the rubber people, or people from the rubber region. And so if you've been following this channel for any period of time, or
which is crazy, the Aztecs, you heard the rumor where it's like a saying, you say something in one person's ear, by the time it gets in a circle of people, by the time it gets back to you, it's different. I think like their culture ended up like that, like because the Olmecs taught the Mayans, and the Mayans taught the Aztecs. And it seems like the Aztecs, when it got to them, shit got like fucking violent. And I think the misunderstanding of gods or what it was passed down from the Mayans. Even I think even the Mayans at one point messed up some information that's passed on from the Olmec. So it's kind of like, damn, what could we know?
Seen me on any number of podcasts, you know I'm a huge fan of the Olmecs, and I'm actually working on a book, my first book, covering the Olmecs. And because of that, I get all kinds of recommendations from you guys as to videos that I should watch or react to. And this one in particular caught my attention, and it is Graham Hancock on the Joe Rogan Experience talking about the Olmecs. Now, to see someone with such a big name and such a famous person discussing the Olmecs on such a huge podcast is kind of a rarity. At least the Olmecs don't get that kind of spotlight. I mean, when's the last time you saw an Olmec head featured in a movie? Not very often, if ever. I mean, I don't think I can think of an example. So let's give this video a try, and I'm going to give you my thoughts throughout the course of the video.
Do you have anything in this book about the Olmecs?
No, not really. I mentioned them briefly. I explored the Olmec mystery in considerable depth.
Could you explain that to people that maybe
in Fingerprints of the Gods? Yes. So it's considered to be the earliest high culture of Central America. Everybody's heard about the Aztecs. Everybody's heard about the Maya. But before the Aztecs and before the Maya, there were a culture who are referred to as the Olmecs. Again, we don't know what they called themselves. That's what the Aztecs called them. They called them the Olmecs, and it means the rubber people because
Sorry, my cat. Man.
rubber producing area of Mexico. They worked in giant megalithic constructions. What they're most famous for is these huge carved human heads, which can be on a scale of up to 20 to 25 tons in weight, and which have curious features which have.
So one thing about this San Lorenzo head, this head right here is like the most iconic head from the Olmec world. When you walk around to the back side of that head, I was there just a couple of months ago. When you walk around to the back side of that head, there's actually a Mesoamerican or maybe even a Maya glyph on the backside, and you don't really see, at least I don't know, people who actually research the Olmecs, you don't really see much in the way of Olmec writing or glyphs. There are some things that we think may be Olmec writing, and I should preface that this head likely was carved and constructed around or erected around somewhere around 1400 to 1200 BC. So at that period, we see some things later on during the Epi-Olmec period, closer to about 300 BC, that may be Mesoamerican glyphs, but nothing as far back as 1300 BC, 1,000 years before. So on the backside of this head, there is what is very clearly a Maya-looking glyph, but thus far, people who translate Maya glyphs haven't been Maya-looking glyph. But thus far, people who translate Maya glyphs haven't been able to identify this. So it's either some kind of graffiti carving that perhaps a Maya person came later on and carved a glyph into it, or this is a heavily overlooked Olmec glyph on the back of San Lorenzo's most iconic Olmec head.
Been interpreted variously as Polynesian, African, don't look like classic Native American features.
Keep that up.
But one of the things I've realized is that there is no classic Native American feature. That Native Americans are have a very complex genetic story with very many different.
That's so true. So when Graham Hancock wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, which I read, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I read it again more recently, probably about 4 years ago, he theorizes that the Olmec heads have some African features and that they look so much different than the rest of the depictions that we see of Native Americans. But then he says here, I mean, and this is years later after more research has come out, then he says here that what he's learned is that there's a wide plethora, or there's a wide range of what Native Americans look like.
And that's where I'm going to try to get to. Yeah, it's diverse because the migration over here, I think there's a lot of stops. There was some stops, maybe some, a lot, I don't know. I believe there were some stops and some breeding, which created a ethnic groups along the way. So interesting to see what he says.
And I would actually even get more specific than that. There is a wide range of what Mexicans look like, or people who lived in Mesoamerica. When you're at Mexico,
Which, again, you have the Afro-Hispanic culture, which is the black Hispanics. And you have the light-skinned ones, which came from European interactions. A lot of the black ones is from slavery or indigenous. What's that topic? What? I mean, that's why you're gonna see different, especially today. People today, oh, there's this there, like bringing up South Africa. There's white people in South Africa. Well, yeah, but they're not indigenous. It's dumb. It's like since like the tone people try to make it out. They didn't know that there was white people in Africa. It's like one, you either thought that they just don't ever have any white people there. You just slow as hell.
City's National Museum of Anthropology, and you go to the Western Mexico section, you see people with high cheekbones, pointed chins, and almost diamond-shaped, very angular jawlines, and they all look like that. Then you go to the Maya region, and you see people who look kind of a bit more like me, like long faces, sort of a long nose. I don't know, high cheekbones. I sort of look like a Maya person. I have a little bit of Yucatec in me, and you can sort of see it in my features from certain angles. But then in the Olmec world, you see people with kind of chubby, fat, round faces with big nose and big lips, and these are commonly interpreted, or at least people like to see them, as being African features. But that's not true at all. People in Veracruz, or I should say indigenous people in Veracruz, don't look like indigenous people that live in the Maya region. They don't look like people who live in Western Mexico. They have their own unique look. And that was never more clear to me than when we walked through the door of the Jalapa Museum, and there was a man there from Veracruz.
Before you get there, let me see if it shows a guy from Veracruz.
Who was he was way over 6 feet tall, but he had a big round face with big lips, a big nose, and he looked exactly like an Olmec head. And I opened the door and I was like, oh wow, there's an Olmec standing right in front of me. So not only do Native Americans look vastly different as you travel across, I mean, it's obvious that they would look vastly different. They cover 1/2 of the planet. So at least, during the time of pre-Columbus, of course they didn't all look the same. They cover half the planet. It's not like, you wouldn't think that people living on the other half, on the eastern half of the planet, all look the same. So all Native Americans look different, and not only Native Americans, but ancient Mexicans as well, or even people from ancient Mexico.
Sad we gotta explain. Yeah, people look different. I mean the Papua New Guinea tribe, that's crazy. They all look like some close cousins. But on that topic, let's go to okay, he was talking about let's look at let's look at an example. Let's try to find it here. Veracruz. Yeah, I will be back. Sorry, I don't mean I'll open my okay, here's a Veracruz people. Alright. You might have seen a biracial nigga. I've seen the head that kinda look like that. This guy, but these guys now. That nigga got European somewhere. Jesus. Hey buddy. Put that down. I'm being an asshole. Wide nose, I see. But that's... Let's see. The women of Veracruz, Mexico. Strike again. You see, it's crazy because it's like, yeah, they got full lips. But the Olmec head. Now see, like this one makes sense. But again, to me, it's like a biracial. We're gonna like a biracial description. In a sense, like that nigga's black. I mean, that's my point right there. It's full when it comes out, like. Well, the other one's just like almost. It's full, but it's like not out. I don't know how to say it. So it's not gonna make sense. But yeah, dang, he's got big ass fucking lips. And those people had a pointed nose. See, that looks Asian, in a sense. But again, that migration coming from that area. I mean, come on, nigga. Alright, now let's see. People. Selma Hayek, she's from Veracruz. Okay, she is definitely. Let me see. Nope. Okay. We back at it. Let's do it again.
Mesoamerica.
And we shouldn't be necessarily surprised by the supposedly non-Native American look of these Olmec heads.
What do we think those helmets were that they were wearing?
Nobody knows, because no physical example of such a helmet has ever been found, just like no physical example of an Egyptian pharaoh's crown has ever been found. All we see is the...
Another thing is so the Olmecs, we think, invented the Mesoamerican ball game. And I won't explain the whole ball game, but there's tons of videos that you can go watch and then come back and pick up. These Olmec heads, the helmets that they're wearing, they've never been found. Just like Egyptian headdresses, they've never been found. But the helmets may represent something that very early ball players would have worn. We don't really see these helmets depicted really anywhere else in Mesoamerica, as far as I know.
All we see is the stone reproductions of them.
Do they universally wear these helmets in these stone reproductions?
They pretty much all wear these helmets. In
This head is in the Jalapa Museum, I believe, and wow, standing in front of it in person is overwhelming. This is probably the smoothest, most beautiful Olmec head of all of them, I would say.
Helmets in the Olmec.
Olmec head of all of them, I would say.
Helmets in the Olmec stonework. There's another fascinating.
The other one had more features to it. That might have been smooth. The other one had more features you can go by. That one looked more road. I don't know why I didn't think that one. Probably this. I don't know. This is experience. I wish I could see it myself, but I can't.
Figure from La Venta, one of the Olmec sites, which is the earliest ever image of a plumed or feathered serpent. The feathered serpent is a famous icon in Central America. Quetzalcoatl, who's the god of peace, the bringer of civilization, who is associated, for example, with the famous pyramid of Kukulkan, which is just another name for Quetzalcoatl at Chichen Itza, where on the spring equinox a shadow effect creates the image of a serpent coiling down the stairway and joining with the carved head of the serpent. There's the image from...
Yeah, so I went and saw this for the first time with NEXT just a couple months ago after I did my Olmec expedition, and it was pretty amazing. So on the spring equinox, the sun is setting in just the right way that a shadow is cast from the corner of the step pyramid, and the shadow that's being cast onto the railway of the stairway going down It looks like a serpent undulating down the pyramid, and it connects with the serpent head at the bottom. Now, a lot of archaeologists think that this is just an accident and that this was bound to happen if you constructed a pyramid just like this. And it doesn't actually just happen on one day. It happens, I think, over the course of a week or 2 weeks. But when you're there, the environment that's there, and there's thousands of people all cheering when you can see the shadow being projected onto the side of the pyramid, and it looks like the serpent is going down the pyramid. I don't know. It feels intentional to me, but many archaeologists think that this may just be an accident of some kind, that the Maya didn't actually.
See, that's what's crazy. It's like the world, ancient people have done architectures that have like, you look at it a certain way, captures the sun coming down perfectly, or Venus going across Mars. Then something like this happens, that's a coincidence, and even though we've seen this around the world, type of, I don't know. This shit is wild to me, that you reply like that. Oh, dude, it's just, no, 100 gallons. Like, no, bro, no. Like they said at the beginning, there's no progression of culture. You know, it's like, showing the art style from the beginning to the end. It's just like they came, if they came, and it was already established. So, which could fall into that theory with the India thing, you know what I'm saying? Coming from over there. I've noticed there's stoneworks, both of them cultures, very detailed in comparison to like Egypt, well, southern America, not Middle America type deal. That makes sense. I don't know. You gotta check it out. Look it up.
Intend for this to happen on purpose, but then again, the Maya were the ancient world's greatest astronomers, and if anybody could do this on purpose, it was absolutely them.
That's the earliest image of a plumed serpent in the Americas. And sitting in the middle of it, and I made a big deal out of this because I think it is a big deal in Magicians of the Gods, sitting in the middle of it is this human figure who's holding this strange bag in his hand. And it's just a fact that those identical bags are found in ancient Sumer.
So I don't mean to cut him off about the handbag thing, but one thing I want to point out that I've always thought was amazing is look at the aesthetics of the head of that plumed serpent. Now, I don't know. It's hard to say that this is a plumed serpent or a feathered serpent for sure. I mean, it looks like it, and obviously it's similar iconography, and it's also in Mesoamerica, so it seems at the very least likely that this is the first depiction of the feathered serpent. But you can see on his tail, he also has a rattle. And so he's some kind of feathered serpent or dragon with a rattlesnake tail. But if you look at how well it's carved and the aesthetics of it and the proportions, you wonder how many generations does it take for artisans to become that good, and how much lost artwork must there be? Because like I said before, the Olmecs seem to be a fully fledged and fully realized civilization from the beginning of their archaeological record. They are making monuments like this from the very beginning, according to the archaeology that we have. And they're carving it into basalt as well, which is an extremely hard stone. So let's continue.
In the hands of individuals who were considered to be civilization bringers, and they also show up on Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe. I call them man bags. And in that case, at Göbekli Tepe, we know they're at least 11,600 years old. So I wonder if we're looking at a sort of badge of office of a group of civilizers who traveled around the world trying to bring back to life a lost...
So they kind of jump through that, where he talks about, he wonders if there's a badge of office of a lost civilization going around the world and bringing some kind of knowledge. It's a big claim, and it's possible to prove.
Really, man. I mean, look, it's already kind of unfolded. They came and had an already established culture. Their artwork. Not a big stretch. A big stretch is just saying like, like how they say about the hunter-gatherers, they just give them credit, man. Without explaining how they did it. It was just people got together and worked together. Okay, they worked together, but it still means they worked together and had knowledge from somewhere. They just show up with, oh, I think I know how the stars align, type shit. You know? And they could. That I mean, shit. You believe in God? Say God is inspiration. We get that inspiration. So you know, the spirit. It could be thought to. Be right back.
but really difficult to prove as well. And the problem is, okay, so Göbekli Tepe, I think, is right after or right in the middle of this cataclysm, and we may see handbags there as well. We also see them in ancient Mesopotamia, which is some 2,000 to 3,000 years before the time of the Olmecs. We also see these handbags in classic Veracruz, which is around 900 AD. If there's this lost civilization going around and bringing knowledge to people, that must mean that they exist during the time of about, let's call it 1500 BC, when Olmec civilization really begins. So this lost civilization that's moving around bringing knowledge of civilization to different corners of the earth, that means they were doing that contemporaneously with the Middle Kingdom and New Kingdom of ancient Egypt, which, I don't know, seems to go against the whole Atlantis idea, because civilization had already kicked off in other areas of the world by then. I mean, I suppose there's an argument that still makes sense, but the civilization bringers, where do they go after 1500 BC? So it's tough to explain these things, although when you look at that monument 19 where he's holding that handbag while being carried inside what is possibly some kind of flying serpent, what do you make of that? And then you see those same kind of handbags in the ancient Middle East, and maybe we see it depicted on Göbekli Tepe, although it's quite different, and I don't think anybody's holding those. What is somebody
When starting?
Somebody made a claim that it's like where agriculture got started, kicked off. It was handbags, like, and Göbekli Tepe, he's like, let's see, show you, what, set of 3 up, and they are, this shit's not even charging it. So it almost looks like a manufacturing of handbags in a sense. It's kind of like give you the mindset of this is where we're starting sending out to the world. I just got a burning sensation in my leg. Go back to Tepe debunk. How you gonna debunk the whole goddamn? And what's crazy is these like creatures are depicting standing like real tall and slender. Now, if you look here, this is probably like so what we have here is go back to Tepe. Handbags on top. That could be a hand. I don't know. What is that? It's a fucked up hand though. Then you got Samaria and that cone right there. You know, they said that's the pineal gland. He's storing knowledge, which could be like, you know what I'm saying? It's honestly, this could be knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. because it each got like, well, dodo birds don't fly. That is a dodo bird, right? It's so beautiful. 1 second. Hold up. Okay. So hang this up. And wings, it's crazy. See, the handbag's above the dodo bird. It's almost like it can't reach flight. I don't know. That's just stupid. I don't know why I said that. The winged serpent. I've never really looked at the image. I didn't know there was a rattle at the end. Read up. He's got the helmet. There's a guy that describes it. Yep, there's the handbags.
Starting a restaurant. K-Tom is your...
Fuck K-Tom. Yes, City. What?
Psychedelic answer of some kind. Perhaps, I mean, we know for a fact that ancient cultures are delving into primitive psychedelics, or I mean, I call them primitive, but they could have been extremely advanced. These guys could have been a great chemist and botanist. Research is just now showing the depth at which the ancient Greek civilization was experimenting with psychedelics, although we've known that for a long time, as well as the Romans, the Egyptians. We know that ancient Americans were doing this too. We know the Aztecs were doing it. Perhaps, rather than there being a physical badge of office traveling around the world, perhaps these ancient civilizations are all tapping into a similar source and somehow having similar epiphanies and seeing similar iconography and producing similar images. I mean, we see ancient patterns. You can look up Greek and Mesoamerican meandering patterns that are basically exactly identical, being produced in ancient Greece, the ancient Maya world, ancient Peru, the Zapotec civilization, the Aztec civilization. You can see it in North America in Chaco Canyon. You can see it in ancient Florida. You can see it in the Mississippian cultures. There's some kind of connection here. And maybe it's not a connection between cultures, but perhaps it's more of a connection where all of these civilizations are tapping into a similar source and then producing similar iconography because of that. Maybe that's an explanation.
Did you talk about Quetzalcoatl? What were you about to say?
I can't remember.
Oh.
I'm in California. I've been smoking lots of dope. You know.
We were talking about different things in the Amazon. Should we rewind and figure out what we
Yeah,
said?
the serpent god you were talking about.
Before Quetzalcoatl, before that. I have another question. The Olmecs, you were talking about the genetics of these people that live in Native Americans, that they vary widely. But the Olmecs seem to have very similar features, the thick lips, the
Yes, they do.
wide noses. Why do we think that is?
Well, this is part of a curious mystery that is not unconnected to the genetic mystery. It's been known by archaeologists for quite a long time that there are anomalous skulls in parts of Brazil, which appear to show very strongly Polynesian or African features, very much like the features that we see on the Olmec heads. And a number of archaeologists who got into trouble with their colleagues for this have used that to argue many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, that the settlement story of the Americas is much more complicated than we've realized. And what the DNA is doing is it's telling us that
Yeah, I mean, the The story of people migrating to the Americas is probably going to be forever evolving, because I think that people were constantly finding some way to be here. I mean, they thought that civilization in the Americas wasn't really kicking off until maybe 1500 BC during the time of the Olmecs, and that people weren't arriving in South America until, I don't know, around 10,000 years ago. But now we're finding evidence of 30,000-year-old campsites in southeastern Brazil, I believe, near the coast. And so how do you make that jump all the way from crossing over from Asia down into Alaska, North America, to the southeast side of Brazil in the Amazon? I don't know. But one of the things that I'm writing about right now is I'm researching ancient Olmec rafts. And while I'm researching that, I'm also researching ancient Colombian, Ecuadorian, and Peruvian balsa rafts that the Spanish navigators encountered leading into Pizarro's expeditions into South America. An archaeologist in the 1940s, I think this is 1947, named Thor Heyerdahl, he theorized that these river rafts were a lot more robust and well constructed than archaeologists had currently thought. And so he was so determined to prove that these rafts were not as primitive as previously thought. He thought that he may be able to prove that these indigenous rafts could potentially travel across the entire Pacific Ocean, that ancient people could navigate deep into the ocean, which, you know, we had thought that they were restricted to the coastlines and tributaries going inland. But in 1947, he launches an expedition to sail from Peru into French Polynesia, which is in the center of the Pacific Ocean, on a small raft that he named Antiquity. And it took him like 110 days or 111 days, and he finally made it to French Polynesia and proved that it was possible to sail across the entire Pacific Ocean on these ancient indigenous rafts. So if he was...
I think that we talk about advanced technology, man. They probably had advanced technology, engineering feats. They can make something so simple work. You know what I'm saying? Like they saw the purpose in like patience, but also minimalist. But where they were minimalist, they made up in their another field maybe, especially with the details. And then there's something that's just simple. What's crazy is like, not to switch like subjects, but it is the same topic. You'll find like stoneworks, right? The precise, perfectly fit. Then you find like these like random places where it's like they were just fucking around. Like they just stacked a tiny stone and then a big ass one on top of it, and it's perfectly balanced. You know, it's like, who did that and why? Well, you see that it's like, you know, they're here. Let me fuck around board. Leave this behind. Show you the example. Stuff is mind blowing, man. It's really cool. I like it.
Was able to figure that out. There were certainly ancient Native Americans that probably did the same thing to some extent. And also, I should add vice versa, that people were coming from Polynesia, sailing across the Pacific Ocean, landing on Easter Island, and then sailing further into Peru, as well as all over the rest of the ancient world. So if that can be proven, it just opens up Pandora's box to the possibilities of well, now we know that people weren't just coming across the Bering Strait, that they may have been migrating from all over the world.
It's telling us that there
I'm about to have proof on that. See, I gotta try to keep this coolness. I wonder if I can. Oh no. So I did something. Doing it well. So that's how you want to have it. Let's test this thing out. Cut that bitch off. Cut that bitch off. How would it get hotter? BBL Drizzy. BBL Drizzy. No, I'm playing. So, is the audio still working? Yes, it is. Cool, we in there. Let's go back to it.
Was something really weird happened with settlement. You see, what happened with those African or Polynesian-looking skulls was that they were tested for DNA.
Why is it that you can't? They're just thinking like a race. Just decided to go this way and one with that way. I'm pretty sure they run across each other and interbred. And that's where that's where our problem is. It's like we don't want to see that. I don't care. What? It doesn't cross people's minds that these people were having sex, bro. Duh. And they had babies that came out. And they're starting to see features like in the Olmec kids, they'll say, oh, there's just Asian features and there's African features. And there's just like, what they call it, local natives, that's what they look like. So that's racist to say they look like Africans. Like, it just means there's some, I've seen a genetic history here that we're ignoring also. It's like we're acting dumb on it, man. I could see, but look at the people there today. It's like, yeah, I mean, again, the Sentinelese people do not have. Let me see how much. What did they say the Sentinelese people's DNA is like? Come on, man. Okay, I looked this up and we'll finish the video. Shit's heating up. The genetic origins of the Andaman Islanders. As library, okay. Let's mitochondrial sequences were retrieved from museum specimens in enigmatic Andaman Islanders to analyze their. Let me see if this won't read it. That's dope.
Mitochondrial sequences were retrieved from museum specimens of the enigmatic Andaman Islanders to analyze their evolutionary history. D-loop and protein coding data reveal that phenotypic similarities with African pygmoid groups are convergent. Genetic and epigenetic data are interpreted as favoring the long-term isolation of the Andamanese, extensive population substructure, and/or two temporally distinct settlements. An early colonization featured populations bearing mtDNA lineage M2, and this lineage is hypothesized to represent the phylogenetic signal of an early southern movement of humans through Asia. The results demonstrate that Victorian anthropological collections can be used to study extinct, or seriously admixed populations, to provide new data about early human origins. Because of their island location, the Andamanese had little sustained contact with the outside world until the mid-19th century. This is reflected in their languages, which are linguistic isolates with striking morphological features. Worm 1971. Although there is a limited affinity, on lexical, structural, and typological grounds only, with a few small isolates in Papua New Guinea and eastern Indonesia. Greenberg 1971, Worm and McElhannon 1975, Rulin 1991. There is no widely accepted interpretation of the relationship of the Andamanese languages to the extant linguistic families of the region. The archaeological evidence for an early occupation of the Andamans is scant because of the mobile lifestyle of the inhabitants and the limited number of excavations that have taken place. At present, the oldest confirmed radiocarbon date is just greater than 2,000 years old, and there are no artifacts to suggest contact or trade with the world outside the archipelago. Cooper 1993.
Okay. I don't think it was the right one. Jawa. Yeah, I like it, Jawa. Sentinelli. Ongi.
The epigenetic data suggest that the Andaman Islanders originated from either two colonization events or a single founding population that has been subdivided for an extended length of time. The geographic and social isolation of the Andaman Islands means that these hypotheses can be tested using genetic data, but it is unfortunate that the majority of Andamanese peoples and their languages are long dead. The Sentinelese and Jarawa, neither of whom is currently thought to number greater than 100, survive because of their continuing hostility toward colonialism and are, therefore, inaccessible.
The irony. If a culture wants to survive against colonialism, extreme violence, for a righteous cause, and Exhibit A, the smallest island. The smallest fucking nation of people in the world has managed to fend off the world's most powerful empires that have came through. That's amazing. It's crazy. It's like they said 100 people. Arrow hits you. Let's keep it moving, man. They are not playing. We cannot subjugate these people. They're trying to be something. We can't even get to the show. That's crazy.
Inaccessible. The Onch have been through a sustained population bottleneck, and the 10 greater Andamanese speech communities are now represented by less than 40 admixed descendants. Consequently, the accessible living populations do not represent either the genetic diversity or the population substructure that existed.
And that's crazy because even today when they try to DNA test people and South American and stuff, they're gonna have genetics that's mixed. Like today, everybody got something. Somebody really, really is European. 100%, or 99%. At 1%, what are you gonna do with that? Show up I'm one of y'all, thousands of years ago. Been gone for a minute. You know what I'm saying?
Existed prior to colonial occupation. However, although powerless to prevent the decline of the Andamanese, Victorian anthropologists were keen to preserve a record of physical variation among humans and obtained collections of skeletal material. These collections now represent a unique scientific resource for genetic research by analysis of ancient DNA, ADNA. mtDNA is commonly used in ADNA studies because of the high copy number in living cells, up to 5,000 to 10,000 times that of single-copy nuclear sequences, and its effectively haploid, non-recombining nature, Avis et al. 1987. The hypervariable region, HVR1, of the mitochondrial control region, D-loop, is routinely used.
Alright, so let's get into the big words. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put y'all to it. Let's get this. See what they say.
When DNA technology was not as advanced as it is today. And what that DNA showed was that they were more closely related to modern Native Americans than they are to any other people in the world. So the notion that there was some connection with Polynesia or Africa was dismissed. But now that we have very firm evidence of an Australasian genetic signal, Australian Aborigines, Papua New Guinea, Melanese.
I gotta remember that. So the migration I was telling you about Australia.
With those kind of features. Now that we have the genetic evidence that is found in the Amazon, we have to go back to that old evidence and reconsider it.
Wow.
Yes.
So let's get this shit out of the way.
But I think that this is perhaps a slippery slope. Not that Graham is insinuating this. I'm just saying that running wild with these ideas that there is African DNA in the Amazon or DNA from dark-skinned people in Papua New Guinea, sure, that can be absolutely true. I don't think that we should then completely discredit ancient Americans for their feats, because I don't think that that is correct at all. I think there were...
Nobody's doing it. Nobody's doing it. If they cannot prove it, and in their own cultures, writings are the same, another people, then we have to assume they was right, judging by even saying that statement, because this is crazy, man. But again, Cortez, man, they came, destroyed all that knowledge, taught that. I think they had books on how to build stuff like this, but I don't know. It's gone, burnt by conquistadors.
were probably navigators coming from other places in the world, let's say Papua New Guinea, Polynesia, Africa. Perhaps they were arriving in the Americas, let's say 1500 BC. Obviously, if they arrived, they must have been
Second, my laptop's in hella charge. Kind of put a little too much power to it. And I'll be right back. Let's see what we left off. No, wait. $14.06. Man, y'all have a good morning. I'll be on an hour or two. About an hour or two.